All right, so we're beginning Unit 3, which is actually pretty long. It's definitely longer than our previous 2 units, both in terms of information and actual days that we'll spend covering it in class. We've got quite a lot of stuff jam-packed into Unit 3. We've got World War I, and then the Roaring Twenties, and then the Great Depression, and then the New Deal. So all of this will be rolled into Unit 3, and then we'll start Unit 4 with the World War II. So this first section, like I said, is going to be World War I. So we're going to be talking about a lot of it, but you really covered a lot of World War I, or at least you should have, in world history. So a lot of what we are going to be looking at is the United States side. We're not going to be talking about a lot of battles necessarily and things like that. We're going to just sort of be looking at the U.S. perspective on World War I and how the war affects us at home especially. So there are 5 causes to World War I, and they're easily remembered in the acronym MANIA, M-A-N-I-A. So I will go through each one of these more specifically, but I've got this here so you can see them all together, so you can see the acronym. So if you remember mania, that mania causes World War I, and you remember what each of those letters stands for, then you should easily remember how all of this plays out. So the first M stands for militarism, and militarism is exactly what it sounds like. It is simply the glorification of the military. Now, the whole idea of Europe, just Europe in itself, is a bad idea, just because there are a lot of people, a lot of countries crammed into not a lot of space, and that is hard to have that many varying views and sort of all of these different powers and militaries in a very small amount of space. They're all overpopulated. Eventually, one is going to try to take over the other. So war in Europe is always and will always be inevitable. At least it had been at this point for like the last 1,000 years. Now, it had been quite some time since we've seen a very serious war in Europe, so it felt inevitable. Like when you're in it, if you're in like a work site and you see a sign that says, we've gone 14 days since our last accident, the more days you go, the higher that number gets, the more likely it is that you're going to have an accident soon. So this is sort of like, we've gone so many years without having a war. The more years we go, the more inevitable and likely it is that we have one soon. So all of these European and world leaders knew that some type of global conflict would be inevitable as time went on. So to prepare, a lot of them start stockpiling weapons, and militarism becomes very popular. They start building up their militaries and their standing armies and their arsenals. But Germany really takes this to another level. Germany's going to take a lot of things to a lot of levels over the next like 50 years or so. But they definitely do it here. By 1914, Germany had the largest standing army, the largest navy, and the largest arsenal, which is sort of weird to think about because they're not the most powerful country per se in terms of like political power, but here they definitely have the most power militarily. Now, the way militarism is, you want your military to be the strongest and best. So when you see Germany increasing the power of their military and you're Great Britain, what's that going to make you want to do? That's going to make you want to increase the size of your military. Then let's say you're Italy and you see Great Britain increasing their military. That's going to make you want to do it too. So everyone sort of raising the bar in response to other people, which is snowballing this whole situation. The second cause, A, stands for alliances. So an alliance is, I'm sure you all know what alliance means. That's just a friendship or an agreement between 2 or more countries. Now, as more nations start getting war ready, they're forming alliances. It's important to have an alliance because, people have your back if you get involved in a problem. But at the same time, having an alliance can make leaders bolder and more reckless. They feel like they don't have to watch what they say or do as much because they have all these other people that can back them up. Now, in Europe at this point, we have 2 major alliance groups. The first is called the Triple Alliance, and that is this green blob here on the left, and that is Italy, Austria, Hungary, and Germany. Now, Austria and Hungary today are 2 different countries, but back in 1914, they were one country, Austria hyphenated Hungary, the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The other alliance we have is here on the right, the Triple Entente, which is Russia, France, and Great Britain. So you should remember that because Entente is a French word. So that is France's alliance with Russia and Great Britain. So, but all of these are powerful countries and empires. So both of these are sort of equally paired off with each other. Now, they all also have other allies. Like, obviously, we are an ally of Great Britain. As you can see, Serbia is an ally of Russia. The Ottomans are an ally of the Germans. They all have other allies. But these are the sort of 6 that break up into these 2 big alliances that you need to know. The third cause, N, stands for nationalism. We've talked about nationalism before, a belief, creed, or political ideology that involves identifying an individual identifying with or becoming attached to their nation to an extreme degree. So nationalism has been growing all over the world for quite some time, but it's going to work a little differently in Europe than it does in the United States. In the United States, we are not a nation of one ethnic group. We are literally a nation of immigrants, so we are a nation of basically all ethnic groups. There's probably not, I don't believe there's a country on the planet that does not have someone from that country living in the United States. I'm sure we represent every country in the world. That just makes sense. So, but no other country is like that. Every other country is a country of an ethnic group for the most part. It's an example is, like I was saying, Austria and Hungary. That was one country, but it represented 2 ethnic groups, the Austrians and the Hungarians. Italy is actually a newer country than the United States is. Italy didn't even come into existence until the 1800s. That's weird to think about because obviously Italians have been around for thousands of years. We've talked about, the Romans and Julius Caesar. They're Italians. Italians aren't new. People who are ethnically Italian they've been around for a long time, but the actual country of Italy just formed in the 1800s. It used to be separate kingdoms. So there are a lot of different ethnic groups all over Europe. And today, a lot of them have their own countries. We've got a lot of countries that exist in 2017 that did not exist in 1914. And I mean a lot of countries. Poland is an example. Poland was not a country in 1914. But there were ethnic Polish people. Now, at this time when nationalism was growing, people started thinking that one nation should not represent multiple ethnic groups. To them, the whole idea of America was crazy, that multiple ethnic groups could not coexist and live in one country, that every ethnic group and nation should have their own nation and country. So people start feeling nationalism not just with their country but with their ethnic group, and this leads to rivalries because if your ethnic group thinks, let's say that you are Polish and you believe that Poland should be a country, that all Poles should have one country to themselves, where is that land going to come from? Are we just going to make a wish and the earth is going to pop out a new chunk of land for us to make Poland? No. To make Poland, we have to take land from other countries that already exist. No one wants to do that. No one wants to just give up land out of the goodness of their heart to give to some other small and not very well represented ethnic minority. That's never going to happen. So when ethnic groups want to increase their power, or when nations want to increase their physical borders because of how large their ethnic group may be, this is threatening others. So we're seeing all of these rivalries start to emerge. For an example, in 1871, there was a part of France called Alsace-Lorraine that was largely populated by people who were ethnically German. It was mostly German people who were living in Alsace-Lorraine, not very many French people. In 1871, Germany took it because there were so many German people there. They were just like, this should be part of Germany, not part of France. It just makes sense. There's not very many French people living there anyway, so they annexed it. Obviously, this isn't going to go over very well with France, so we're seeing lots of this happen all over the place. The next cause, imperialism. So that's I. We talked about imperialism a lot in the last unit. You should know what that is: a policy of extending a country's power and influence through diplomacy or military force. Now, thanks to imperialism, we have quite a few countries who qualify as a technical empire by the time we get to the 20th century. The United States is one of them. Austria-Hungary is an empire. Russia is an empire. The Ottomans are an empire. The French have an empire. But the British definitely still have the largest, and they have had the largest for quite some time. Now, colonization has taken place all over the New World, and it's safe to say that the New World is settled, right? We got the United States, Canada, and Mexico, and all sorts of Central America. All of that has people living in it, thanks to the Spanish, the British, and the French, and we can safely say that all of that is colonized. Now, the next place to go and colonize with Europeans is Africa, because the governments in Africa are very weak or non-existent at all, so it was an easy target for European countries to go in and claim parts of Africa for their own. So there's going to be this mad rush to colonize Africa in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and this is going to lead to rivalries because they're all racing for the same land. At the same time, the Ottoman Empire is finally, after all of these years, crumbling and beginning to fall apart. All of their land is then up for grabs. When this empire fails, it's up to someone else to take that land over. So everyone's also going to be racing for the land that the Ottomans are giving up, once again creating more rivalries. And then finally, the last and final cause, which is sort of just the straw that breaks the camel's back, A, for assassination. Now, had these first four causes, militarism, alliances, nationalism, imperialism, had they happened and this assassination never taken place, then something else would have just caused the problem and the war still would have happened. But had those first four never happened, but this assassination still had taken place, then this would have remained a very small problem. It is the four causes leading up to the assassination that make it an actual world war. So, one of the ethnic groups who I said was wanting more power and more influence were Serbian. So Serbia is a country at this point, but it's very small, and there are a lot of people who are Serbs who live in places that aren't actually Serbia. One of those places is Bosnia. Bosnia was very highly populated with Serbian people, and so the Serbs thought that Bosnia should belong to Serbia, but at the time, Bosnia belonged to Austria-Hungary. So the future leader of Austria-Hungary, his name is Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Franz Ferdinand is going around with his wife, Sophie, and they're going sort of taking a tour of Austria-Hungary and all of their holdings, basically to meet the people because he's next in line for the throne. They go to Bosnia and to the capital, the city of Sarajevo. Sarajevo is spelled S-A-R-A, like Sarah, and then J-E-V-O, Sarajevo, all one word. And a group of Serbian nationalists known as the Black Hand, they're a secret society who were radicals, basically terrorists. They absolutely hated Franz Ferdinand, thought he was a tyrant, thought his family were tyrants, and that they were ruining, the Serbian people, oppressing them and forcing the Serbs in Bosnia to be a part of Austria-Hungary when they should be a part of Serbia. So they devised this plan to assassinate him, and they do on June 28th of 1914. Both Franz Ferdinand and his wife, Sophie, are shot and killed in Sarajevo. After this is when things really get out of hand, but this is really what kicks it off.